The morning started like any other on the crystal city of New Altair. The three purple suns cast their gentle light through the transparent domes that protected the peaceful streets below. Children of 7 different alien species played together in the parks while their parents worked in research labs and art studios. No one carried weapons. No one needed to. Ambassador Taemin walked slowly through the central plaza, his 3 eyes taking in the beautiful sight of so many different beings living in harmony. The Kepler Coalition had been at peace for 300 years. War was something they read about in old history books, not something that could touch their perfect worlds. His morning routine ended when his communication device started screaming with emergency signals. Sir. His aide Junho burst into the plaza, his scaled hands shaking as he held up a portable scanner. You need to see this right now. Taemin looked at the display and felt his heart stop beating. Black ships. Hundreds of them. Moving fast toward Coalition space like a dark storm cloud. Who are they? Taemin asked, though part of him already knew the answer. The Vorthan Imperium, sir. They just destroyed the outer monitoring station at Kepler 12. Complete destruction in less than 10 minutes. Taemin had heard stories about the Vorthans. Everyone in the galaxy had. They were the nightmare that peaceful species whispered about in the dark. An empire built on conquest and fear, with technology designed for one purpose only, destroying anyone who stood in their way. How long do we have? Taemin asked as they ran toward the emergency command center. At their current speed, they will reach our first colony world in 2 days. The command center was chaos. Beings from all 7 coalition species rushed around, trying to understand what was happening to their perfect world. Communications officers sent desperate messages to their outer colonies while defense coordinators stared helplessly at tactical displays showing their pathetic fleet of research vessels and cargo ships. Sir, called out Communications Officer Sujin, her voice breaking with fear. Kepler 9 is under attack. They're asking for help. Taemin watched the main screen as it showed the peaceful farming world of Kepler 9. Green fields and simple villages spread across a beautiful planet where nothing more dangerous than agricultural equipment had ever existed. Then the black ships appeared in orbit. The first bombardment turned the northern continent into a sea of fire. The second attack destroyed the planetary government center. Within 1 hour, 3 million peaceful farmers were dead. Send evacuation orders to all outer colonies, Taemin ordered, his voice steady despite the terror growing in his chest. Get everyone back to the core worlds. Sir, Junho said quietly, what about our defense fleet? Taemin looked at the pathetic display showing their military strength. 12 research vessels with basic shields and mining lasers. 3 patrol boats designed for rescuing lost travelers. 1 command ship built for exploration, not war. Signal all ships to fall back to Harmony Prime, he said. We cannot fight them in open space. Over the next 3 days the Coalition watched their outer worlds die one by one. Each planet fell within hours. The Vorthans did not try to capture territory or take prisoners. They simply destroyed everything that moved and moved on to the next target. Refugee ships arrived at Harmony Prime carrying terrible stories. The Vorthans used weapons that turned matter into energy. Their ships could travel faster than anything the Coalition had ever built. Their soldiers wore armor that could survive direct hits from industrial lasers. We need help, Taemin told the emergency council meeting. We cannot fight this alone. Who can we ask? Demanded Counselor Hygiene, her normally calm voice filled with panic. Every military power in the galaxy fears the Vorthans. They would rather let us die than risk becoming targets themselves. Then we ask everyone, Taemin said. Every species, every world, every space station. Someone out there must be willing to help. The message went out on every frequency the Coalition knew. Emergency broadcasts in 200 different languages, transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. The same desperate plea repeated over and over again. This is the Kepler Coalition calling anyone who can hear this message. We are peaceful people under attack by the Vorthan Imperium. We have no weapons, no armies, no way to defend ourselves. Our children are dying. Our worlds are burning. If there is anyone out there who believes that peaceful beings have the right to exist, please help us. We do not ask you to fight for us. We ask you to help us learn how to fight for ourselves. The responses came quickly. Most were expressions of sympathy followed by apologies. The Centauri Federation was sorry but could not risk war with the Vorthans. The Free Traders Alliance wished them luck but had their own people to protect. The Galactic Republic sent thoughts and prayers but no ships. Then, on the 5th day, as the last refugee ships arrived carrying survivors from Kepler 7, something unexpected happened. Sir, Sujin called out from her communication station. We have a response. Someone is coming. Who? Taemin asked, hardly daring to hope. They call themselves humans, sir. From a planet called Earth. They say they received our message and they are on their way. How many ships? Sujin checked her display again, frowning. Only 3, sir. But they say not to worry. They are bringing something more important than ships. What could be more important than ships? Junho asked. The answer came in the strange accent of the human captain whose voice suddenly filled the command center. This is Captain Minjun of Earth. We do not bring you weapons or armies. We bring you something better. We bring you hope, and the knowledge that sometimes the best way to win a war is to fight it like no one expects you to. The 3 Earth ships arrived at Harmony Prime looking nothing like the salvation the Coalition had prayed for. Instead of mighty warships with gleaming armor and massive weapons, the humans brought cargo vessels that looked like they had seen better days, construction equipment that belonged on building sites, and what appeared to be civilian transport ships. Ambassador Taemin stood at the docking bay viewing window, watching the human shuttle approach. His 3 eyes focused on the small craft that wobbled slightly as it landed, nothing like the perfect flight patterns of Coalition vessels. This is what answered our call for help? Counselor Hygiene whispered beside him. They look like merchants. The shuttle door opened and 3 humans stepped out. The first was a man of medium height with dark hair starting to turn gray at the temples. His uniform was simple and practical, not decorated like the dress clothes Coalition diplomats wore. Behind him walked a woman with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything around her, and a younger man carrying what looked like a portable computer. I am Captain Minjun, the lead human said through his translation device. His voice was calm and steady. This is Commander Soare and Lieutenant Jae-ho. Thank you for allowing us to dock. Taemin tried to hide his disappointment as he led the humans to the council chamber. The great hall was filled with representatives from all 7 Coalition species, each one hoping to see their salvation walk through those doors. Instead, they saw 3 ordinary-looking humans with no visible weapons and no obvious signs of military power. Captain Minjun, Taemin began formally, we are grateful that you responded to our call. However, I must ask, where is your fleet? Where are your weapons? The Vorthans will be here in less than 2 days. Minjun looked around the room at all the worried faces. We brought 3 ships and 47 people. That is our entire military response. The silence that followed was painful. Counselor Dong-su of the Mining Guild stood up, his rocky skin changing color with anger. 47 people? Against the entire Vorthan war machine? Are you making fun of us? Commander Soare stepped forward. Sir, with respect, we studied the battle recordings you transmitted with your distress call. We also analyzed every piece of data about Vorthan military doctrine we could find. They are powerful, yes. But they have weaknesses. Weaknesses? Counselor Nari laughed bitterly. They destroyed our outer worlds in hours. Their weapons turn our ships into dust. What weaknesses? Lieutenant Jae-ho activated his portable computer, projecting a holographic display that showed the recent battles. The Vorthans use overwhelming force and rigid military structure. Every attack follows the same pattern. Direct assault, maximum firepower, complete destruction. They have never learned to adapt because they have never needed to. And how does that help us? Demanded Admiral Kyung-woo, the Coalition's ranking military officer. We have mining ships and cargo haulers. They have battle cruisers. Minjun moved to the center of the room. Admiral, may I ask what your ships carry? The mining vessels have gravitational manipulators for asteroid work. The cargo ships carry standard transport equipment. The research stations have quantum tunneling devices for deep space experiments. Kyung-woo paused. Why does this matter? Because, Commander Soare said with the first smile anyone had seen in days, you just described a fleet of weapons that the Vorthans have never encountered. The room erupted in confused voices. Counselor Hygiene shouted over the noise. Those are not weapons. They are tools for peaceful work. The best weapons often are, Lieutenant Jae-ho said quietly, and somehow his soft voice cut through all the arguing. A gravitational manipulator designed to move asteroids can also grab enemy ships and hold them still. A quantum tunneling device meant for research can create holes in enemy armor. A cargo transport that moves faster than military vessels can strike where the enemy least expects it. Captain Minjun waited for quiet, then continued. On Earth we learned to fight when we had nothing left to fight with. We used farming tools against trained armies. We turned civilian vehicles into mobile weapons. We made warriors out of ordinary people who simply refused to give up. But we do not know how to fight, whispered Counselor Sujin. We have been peaceful for 300 years. We do not even have the words for military tactics in most of our languages. Then we will teach you, Commander Soare said firmly. Not how to be killers but how to be defenders. Not how to conquer but how to survive. Ambassador Taemin looked around the room at his fellow council members. Fear was still there but something else was growing alongside it. Something that had been missing since the first Vorthan attack. Oh, what do you need from us? Taemin asked. 48 hours, Minjun replied. Give us 2 days to work with your people. Show us your ships, your equipment, your industrial facilities. Let us teach your crew some new ideas about what their tools can do. And then? Then we find out if 3 ships and 47 humans can teach an entire civilization how to fight for its life. Admiral Kyungwoo stood slowly. Captain Minjun, if you can turn our merchant fleet into something that can face the Vorthans, you will have performed a miracle. Minjun looked at the old admiral with steady eyes. Sir, sometimes miracles are just good ideas that nobody thought to try before. We are very good at thinking of ideas that nobody expects. As the council meeting ended and the coalition leaders hurried away to prepare their people for whatever the humans had planned, Taemin remained behind with the 3 Earth officers. Captain, he said quietly, may I ask why you came? Your world is safe. The Vorthans do not even know Earth exists. Why risk everything for strangers? Minjun looked out the great windows at the refugee ships still arriving from the destroyed outer worlds. Ambassador, on Earth we have a saying. Evil wins when good people do nothing. We may not be the strongest or the smartest species in the galaxy. But we will not stand by and watch peaceful people die when we might be able to help. The transformation began at dawn on Harmony Prime's main orbital station. Lieutenant Jeho stood in the massive cargo bay of the mining ship Crystal Harvester, surrounded by confused alien workers who had never seen their equipment used for anything except peaceful asteroid mining. Master Dong-Su, Jeho said to the rock-skinned mining guild leader, show me how your gravitational tether works. Dong-Su activated the device with practiced ease. A blue beam shot out and locked onto a practice asteroid, holding it perfectly still in space. We use this to position rocks for cutting. Very simple. Now imagine that asteroid is an enemy ship, Jeho said quietly. Imagine grabbing their engines and making them unable to move or turn. What happens to a warship that cannot maneuver? Dong-Su's rocky face changed color as understanding dawned. It becomes a sitting target for everyone else. Exactly. Your mining equipment is not just for mining anymore. Across the station, Commander Soare worked with a group of civilian ship captains who had spent their entire careers moving cargo between peaceful worlds. Captain Nari of the transport vessel Starlight listened nervously as Soare explained concepts that went against everything she had ever learned. Forget everything you know about proper flying, Soare said firmly. In combat, the ship that follows the rules is the ship that dies. Your cargo containers are not just for carrying goods anymore. They are decoys, shields, and surprise weapons. But the safety regulations, Nari protested. The shipping codes clearly state that containers must be properly secured and... The Vorthans do not care about shipping codes, Soare interrupted. They care about destroying you. So we give them targets they do not expect. Empty containers that explode when shot. Fake cargo pods that hide real weapons. Supply ships that suddenly become attack vessels. Nari looked at her beloved cargo ship with new eyes. You want me to turn Starlight into a warship? I want you to turn Starlight into something the Vorthans have never seen before. Something they will not know how to fight. The real breakthrough came when Communications Officer Sujin made a discovery that changed everything. She had been studying the Vorthan fleet communications that their long-range sensors had intercepted, looking for any weakness in their coordination. Captain Minjun, she called excitedly from her workstation, I found something important. Minjun hurried over to her display, which showed the complex network of signals flowing between the Vorthan ships. What am I looking at? Their fleet uses a hierarchical quantum communication network, Sujin explained, her voice growing more excited. Every ship reports to a command vessel, which makes all the tactical decisions. The individual ships cannot think for themselves. Like a body without a brain, Commander Soare said, understanding immediately. Cut off the head and the rest becomes helpless. But how do we reach their command ship? Asked Admiral Kyungwoo, who had been listening. It will be protected in the center of their formation, surrounded by hundreds of other vessels. Lieutenant Jeho smiled for the first time since arriving. Sir, that is where our converted research equipment becomes very useful. The quantum tunneling devices your scientists use for experiments can create temporary passages through space. You mean teleportation? Not exactly. More like, very precise shortcuts. Short range, very dangerous and completely unexpected. The next 36 hours passed in a blur of desperate preparation. Human advisors spread throughout the coalition fleet, teaching alien crews tactics that seemed impossible. Miners learned to use their gravity wells as traps. Cargo pilots practiced attack patterns that looked like random chaos but struck with surgical precision. Research scientists discovered that their deep space scanners could be modified to jam enemy communications. Captain Minjun stood on the bridge of the coalition command ship, watching the preparation through the viewports. Beside him, Admiral Kyungwoo looked worried. "Captain, are you certain this will work? We are betting the survival of our entire civilization on ideas that have never been tested." "Admiral," Minjun replied calmly, "every military innovation in history started as an untested idea. The question is not whether our plan is perfect. The question is whether it is good enough to surprise an enemy who has never been surprised before." The alarm klaxons began wailing across the station. Long-range sensors had detected the approaching Vorthan Fleet 12 massive warships moving in perfect formation toward Harmony Prime. "All ships to positions," Admiral Kyungwoo ordered. "Begin Operation Human Way." The coalition fleet moved out to meet the enemy, but not in any formation the Vorthans would recognize. Mining ships took positions behind asteroids. Cargo vessels scattered across the system like frightened animals. Research stations powered up equipment that had never been designed for combat. When the Vorthan Advance Fleet entered the Harmony system, they found exactly what they expected, a small group of civilian vessels with no military training and no proper weapons. The Vorthan Admiral Kreshton smiled as he gave the order to attack. "Destroy them quickly," he commanded. "We have a schedule to maintain." The battle lasted exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended, 6 Vorthan warships were destroyed or disabled, and the remaining 6 were fleeing back toward Imperial space in complete confusion. The impossible had happened. The mighty Vorthan Imperium had been defeated by miners, merchants, and scientists who had learned to fight like no one expected. On the bridge of the coalition command ship, Admiral Kyungwoo stared at the tactical display in amazement. How did we win?" Captain Minjun looked out at the debris field where the Vorthan ships had been. "We won because we did not fight the war they expected. We fought the war we could win." The news traveled faster than the fastest ships in the galaxy. Within days, every space station, every trading post, and every hidden rebel base knew the impossible story. The peaceful Kepler coalition had defeated a Vorthan fleet. Miners and merchants had destroyed warships that had conquered dozens of worlds. On the prison planet of Zakros 4, enslaved beings who had given up hope whispered the story in dark corners. On the border worlds that paid tribute to avoid destruction, planetary governors held secret meetings. In the deepest parts of space, pirate crews and free traders began to wonder if the mighty Vorthan Imperium might not be so mighty after all. The response from the Vorthan capital was swift and terrible. Battle Admiral Kreshtar of the Death Legion stood before the Golden Throne, his black armor gleaming under the harsh lights of the Imperial Palace. Behind him, holographic displays showed the humiliating defeat at Harmony Prime. "Explain this failure," commanded the Vorthan Emperor, his voice like grinding stone. "My lord," Kreshtar replied carefully, "the advance fleet encountered unexpected tactics. The coalition forces fought in ways that do not match any known military doctrine. Our commanders were unprepared for such chaos." Chaos. The Emperor's eyes glowed red with anger. "A handful of peaceful aliens defeated 12 of our warships with chaos? They were aided by an unknown species called humans, my lord. Our intelligence networks have no records of this Earth or its military capabilities." The Emperor stood slowly from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. "I do not care if they were aided by ancient gods, Admiral. You will take the Death Legion to this coalition space. You will destroy every human ship, every coalition world, and every being that dares to think they can resist Imperial will. Make an example that will be remembered for 1,000 years. It will be done, my lord." Back in coalition space, Captain Minjun stood in the rebuilt command center of Harmony Prime, studying intelligence reports that made his blood run cold. The Death Legion was not like the advance fleet they had defeated. These were the Emperor's elite forces, 200 warships commanded by officers who had crushed rebellions across half the galaxy. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Jeho, "our scouts confirmed the enemy fleet composition. 40 heavy cruisers, 60 destroyers, 95 support vessels, and 5 dreadnoughts including the flagship Dark Victory. They will arrive in 18 hours." Admiral Kyung-woo entered the room, his face grim. "Captain, our fleet is ready, but we are still massively outnumbered. Even with the new tactics, how can we face such overwhelming force?" Minjun turned to look out the great windows at Harmony Prime below. The planet's surface was busy with activity as the final preparations were made. "Admiral, sometimes the biggest advantage is not having the biggest army. Sometimes it is fighting on ground that you know better than your enemy." "What do you mean?" Commander Soare joined them at the window, pointing down at the planet's orbital structures. "We are not fighting this battle in empty space, Admiral. We are fighting it here, in your home system, using every piece of technology and every natural feature we can find." Below them, the planet's 3 space elevators stretched up from the surface like impossibly thin silver threads. Orbital research stations hung in carefully planned positions around the planet. The asteroid belt that surrounded Harmony Prime sparkled with hidden installations. "The mining stations have been converted?" Minjun asked. "All of them," Lieutenant Jae-ho confirmed. "The gravitational mining equipment has been modified into kinetic bombardment systems. When the enemy fleet enters the asteroid field, they will face attacks from directions they cannot predict." "And the space elevators?" "The most ambitious part of the plan," Commander Soare said with a grim smile. "We have turned them into the largest mass drivers in known space. Each elevator can launch projectiles at significant fractions of light speed." Admiral Kyung-woo shook his head in amazement. "You humans think of the strangest things. Who looks at a space elevator and sees a weapon?" "People who are desperate enough to try anything," Minjun replied. "The Vorthans expect us to meet them in open space with ships and conventional weapons. Instead, we turn our entire system into one massive trap." The enemy fleet arrived exactly on schedule, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Battle Admiral Kreshtar studied the tactical displays from his command throne aboard the Dark Victory, expecting to see the pathetic coalition forces cowering behind their planet. Instead, he found almost nothing. A few scattered ships hiding behind asteroids. Some research stations that appeared to be civilian installations. No organized defense fleet, no orbital fortresses, no sign of the humans who had caused so much trouble. "It appears they are hiding," reported his tactical officer. "Sensors detect minimal military activity." "Cowards," Kreshtar sneered. "Begin the standard bombardment pattern. Destroy the orbital installations first, then crack the planet's surface. Show them what happens to those who resist the Empire." The Death Legion advanced in perfect formation, their massive ships moving through the asteroid field like dark predators approaching helpless prey. The first attack wave reached optimal firing range and prepared to unleash devastating firepower on the seemingly defenseless planet. That was when Harmony Prime fought back. The attacks came from everywhere at once. Hidden weapons platforms emerged from asteroid camouflage, striking with precisely coordinated fire. The planet's research stations revealed themselves to be massive kinetic weapon systems, launching projectiles that moved too fast to dodge. Most shocking of all, the space elevators began firing, turning peaceful transportation systems into weapons of impossible power. "Impossible!" Kreshtar roared as his fleet was torn apart by attacks that seemed to come from the system itself. "How are they coordinating this? Where are their command ships?" The answer was something the Vorthans had never encountered, an entire civilization that had learned to fight as one. Every mining station, every research platform, every hidden installation worked together with perfect timing, guided by human tactical knowledge and coalition determination. When the Dark Victory finally exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the entire system, taking the Death Legion's command structure with it, the remaining Vorthan ships fled in panic toward Imperial space. The unthinkable had happened again. The Vorthan Empire's elite forces had been shattered by an enemy that refused to fight by the rules. The news of the Death Legion's destruction spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On the slave worlds of the Vorthan Empire, beings who had lived in fear for generations looked up at the stars with something they had forgotten how to feel: hope. The first rebellion started on Zakros 4, where Counselor Huan led the mining slaves in an uprising using techniques transmitted by coalition broadcasts. Within days, the prison planet was free. The second rebellion came from the factory world of Nexus 7, where workers turned their industrial equipment into weapons just as the coalition had done. Within 6 months, 47 worlds had declared independence from the Vorthan Empire. The mighty Imperial fleet, designed to crush external enemies, found itself fighting internal wars on 100 different fronts. Admiral Minjun, now wearing the combined insignia of Earth and the Coalition Defense Force, stood in the Great Assembly Hall on Harmony Prime. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber: former Vorthan slaves, neutral systems that had joined the alliance, and refugees from the collapsing empire. "The war is over," he announced to the packed assembly. "But our real work is just beginning." In the front row, Ambassador Taemin smiled as he watched the human who had saved their civilization. The old Altarian had aged visibly during the conflict, but his three eyes now held a confidence that had never been there before. "What do we do with the Vorthan refugees?" asked Councillor Sujin, gesturing to a section of the assembly where former Imperial citizens sat nervously. "Many of their worlds are asking for aid." Commander Soare stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "We help them. Not because they deserve it but because it is the right thing to do." The Vorthan people were trapped by their own system just as much as the species they conquered. A young Vorthan female in the refugee section raised her hand hesitantly. Her name was Veltar, and she had fled the Imperial capital when the government collapsed. "Commander, my people, we only knew how to conquer. We do not know how to build peaceful societies. What happens to us now?" Lieutenant Jeho, now bearing the rank of Coalition Technical Advisor, smiled at her. "You learn. Just like the Coalition learned to fight when they had to, you can learn to build when you need to. We will teach anyone who wants to learn." The questions continued for hours. How to rebuild destroyed worlds. How to establish fair governments on planets that had known only tyranny. How to create trade agreements between species that had been enemies for centuries. Captain Minjun listened to it all, amazed at how quickly the galaxy was changing. When the formal session ended, he walked to the great windows that looked out over Harmony Prime's restored cities. The planet below bustled with activity as beings from dozens of worlds worked together on reconstruction projects. "Admiral," a familiar voice said behind him. He turned to see Ambassador Taemin approaching, accompanied by an elderly human woman Minjun did not recognize. "Ambassador, who is your companion?" "This is Dr. Haikyo from Earth. She arrived yesterday with a relief convoy." The woman stepped forward with a warm smile. "Admiral Minjun, it is an honor to meet you. I bring greetings from Earth and news that might interest you." "What news?" "Your government has decided to establish a permanent diplomatic mission in Coalition space. Earth wants to help build this new galactic alliance you have created." Minjun felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he had not realized was there. "We are not going home? Some of your people will return to Earth, of course. But many have asked to stay and continue the work here. The galaxy needs teachers, Admiral. It needs people who understand that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice." As they talked, more beings approached the window. Admiral Kyung-woo of the Coalition Defense Force, his military uniform now decorated with medals from a dozen grateful worlds. Captain Nari, whose cargo ship had become a symbol of civilian courage throughout the galaxy. Mining Guild Master Dong-su, whose gravitational weapons had inspired industrial workers on 50 different planets. "Look at that," Kyung-woo said, pointing to the space traffic around Harmony Prime. Former enemy ships working alongside Coalition vessels. Vorthan refugees building new lives on worlds their people once tried to destroy. Who would have thought such a thing was possible? "Anyone who understood that beings are not born evil," Commander Soare replied. "They are taught to be evil and they can be taught to be good." A communication alert chimed, and Lieutenant Jeho checked his portable device. "Admiral, we have an interesting message. 3 more species have sent diplomatic missions asking to join the alliance. They want to learn what they call the human way of fighting without hatred." Minjun laughed quietly. "I suppose we will need more teachers." As the group dispersed to their various duties, Ambassador Taemin remained at the window with Minjun. The old diplomat looked thoughtful as he watched the busy traffic of ships from 100 different worlds. "Admiral, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you ever regret answering our call for help? Your people could have stayed safe on Earth. You risked everything for strangers." Minjun was quiet for a long moment, watching a group of young beings from different species playing together in the plaza far below. "Ambassador, on Earth we have learned that safety is not something you can build by hiding behind walls. Real safety comes from living in a galaxy where everyone has the chance to thrive. And if new threats arise? If other empires try to conquer what we have built? Then we will teach more people to defend themselves. Not with hatred or revenge, but with the knowledge that freedom is worth fighting for." In the depths of space, new messages traveled between the stars. Ships carried teachers instead of weapons, ideas instead of threats. The galaxy had learned that the greatest victory was not conquering your enemies, but helping them become your friends. And on 1,000 worlds, children who had never known peace learned to play together while their parents built a future that would have seemed impossible just 1 year before. The human way had become the galaxy's way.